the Market Advantage. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay with me, and we're reviving the Market Advantage for one day here, talking about some pricing differences, so we don't waste Russell's day. I mean, that's pretty much why we're doing it today.
The car was dead, and we were revived. I was trying to make an analogy there, but that did not go well. So we're gonna pretend that didn't happen, and we're gonna move on.
We'll look at some pricing differences and look at some values for tonight's huge slates. And what's the news that's come out with Deron Williams sitting out and Harris as well? Going to be out tonight. J.J. Barea, Raymond Felton are going to be the guys in the backcourt. And Barea's got a pretty sizable difference on between the both sites. Even though he is in a tougher matchup, I think he's a better play on FanDuel.
Yeah,
a lot cheaper.
4,800 on DraftKings and 3,900 on FanDuel. I mean, that is actually a pretty big difference when you start to build lineups. I think he's much more appealing on FanDuel. I think at 4,800 on DK, it's kind of moving into that range where maybe that upside isn't quite where you want it. Still a nice play, but definitely prefer him on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, I think moving over to DK, you're kind of looking at, okay, the matchup isn't that great for him, but, FanDuel, you're kind of like, okay, still basically a punt price, and you can kind of work in those stars and studs with a guy like him in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the only real noticeable price difference, but we're looking at some value plays as well. Jeff Teague, obviously coming off a 50-point fantasy game in just 27 minutes, and before that, he's been solid. He kind of finds himself in that 25 to 30 fantasy point range and still is below 6K.
Yeah, kind of like with Amino a few days ago. I think he has a decent chance at putting up a good score tonight, but this outburst, probably not something you expect him to sort of do again, Yeah,
I apologize for anyone who I said Teague has zero upside for tournaments the other day, but he's just kind of an average fantasy points per minute player, always has been. So I don't usually expect those 50-point outbursts, often from him.
Yeah. So decent value, but not a tournament winner.
No, although he was the other night, but I still don't think I'm going to stand by my, analysis there. I don't think he's always a great tournament.
We're going to die on that hill, Jason.
Looking at other options here, speaking of Hill, George Hill coming off another monster game, another guy who you never expect that upside with, but he's been playing really heavy minutes of late, and he's not a great fantasy points per minute play, but he's always a guy who gets you above 20 fantasy points, and in a great matchup against Brooklyn. Still below 6K, so he kind of sits on your radar, but
you're
really in towards Teague.
Yeah, no, I like him at that price. It's still pretty reasonable for sort of the type of player he is and the role he has. So I think there's still a decent upside at that price.
Yeah. If you're looking at some tournament guys, Zach LaVine always in play with his upside, still sits in around that, smaller 5K range of his. And, he's not hurting lineups when he's not going off. So it's been nice to see a little bit of consistency, 24, 21, 23 points. So you're really taking chances on that high upside, but he hasn't been burning you if you've been playing him lately.
Yeah, and I kind of view him and Marcus Smart pretty similarly to how I viewed them yesterday. Neither really did much, but I still have the same opinion of them that I had yesterday. So I kind of like both of them as upside plays.
Yeah. Looking at shooting guard, no real price differences tonight, but if we're looking at value guys, Evan Turner has been seeing solid minutes of late, averaging 27 in the last 6 games and been producing. He's kind of been an all-around guy, 13, 4, and 5 on average in that span, shooting 57%. So he's shooting guard eligible for just 4,800 on DK there. I like him tonight because I like that game. It's going to be competitive, and it's predicted to be pretty high scoring.
Yeah, no, that's a good game in general. I like Turner, and obviously last night he took the bulk of the work, so that's definitely a nice matchup there.
Yeah, shooting guard is kind of ugly down below. People, I can never get behind Deion Waiters, but the guy is still playing 35 minutes a game and sees right around 20 to 25 fantasy points. So I'm never going to be the one to recommend Deion Waiters, but he is out there.
Nah. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Garrett Temple at 4,700.
I mean, I like that game for high scoring, and he's still playing big minutes even with Beal back, coming off the bench and playing still on that minutes limit. So I don't mind him.
Not a great matchup, but I think he's going to get his minutes either way, and he's not going to be very high owned. So
Yeah, I mean, he's got double-digit shot attempts in 2 of the last 3 games. So, I mean, he's kind of been an offensive guy of late. So I think you're going to probably take wild shots at that huge total anyway from both sides. So I don't mind that at all. With the Dallas news, Raymond Felton, shooting guard. Once again, it's not a good matchup for that backcourt, but they are very cheap. And Felton's been playing pretty well, averaging 11, 3, and 3 in the last 6 games there. So while it's not a nice matchup, it is a weak position and still want to kind of target for deep value.
yeah, shooting guard's a little tough tonight because I think you're going to be putting your resources towards other positions. But Felton's all right. It's going to be one of these guys that doesn't have a great matchup, but still puts up 30 to 40 points. So he definitely has 30-point fantasy potential. So
yeah. Kind of like the Houston front court situation last night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Ben McLemore, if he sits out, Marco Bellinelli stepped into his starting role, played 36 minutes. Obviously, you don't like anyone against Jimmy Butler, but I mean, he's near bare minimum. And I mean, Chicago hasn't been that great defensively and kind of against shooting guards as well. So I kind of, even if the Kings have all the injuries, I still like that game a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a nice game. As we've seen, I think anything Chicago does is averaged out by the incompetency of I don't know if that's a word or not, but we're going to roll with it. It's going to be a word for the Sacramento Kings team. I think that'll be a fun game.
Yeah. We've been playing some Bryce Jean-Jones lately with Evans out, but as good as he's been for the price, you can't like him against the Spurs team that are just the number 1 defense in the league. And with Bellinelli, just 100 more, and with kind of guys in that range anyway, you're not really playing on him. You're not going to pick on the Spurs.
Yeah, we love you, Dijon, but you're not happening tonight.
Yeah. Moving over to small forward, where there are some pretty decent pricing differences, and one is Rudy Gay, 7,200 there on DK and 8,000 on FanDuel, so a decent difference. I think it's just a little bit more value to me on DK, especially if Cousins sits tonight.
Yeah, that 800 actually kind of makes a big difference for me. I just like him so much more in DraftKings. I don't think he's much of a play on FanDuel. Even if Cousins sits, he does get more usage, but I don't like it at that 8K price tag.
Yeah, well, I mean if Cousins sits, it's going to depend on a lot how I'm going to be building my lineups tonight. And this is one of those nights where you're waiting on injury news up until last minute, so you're kind of wasting time if you're building lineups early.
Right.
Yeah. But Gordon Hayward coming off a monster overtime game. He's still a little bit cheaper on DK, where kind of always a consistent cash game play. Obviously showed off big upside, but it was in that tournament game or in that overtime game. And I kind of like him just more of a cash game route. But as a similar price guy to Gay, you definitely prefer Gay if Cousins sits.
Right, and on a day like tonight where there's an 11-game slate, you kind of need major upside to sort of hit that tournament win. So yeah, Gay over Hayward for tonight, but yeah, they're both. I do like Hayward more as a cash game play.
Yeah. Looking at other guys in that range, or Robert Covington, he's my big GPP guy tonight. I think that game's going to be pretty overlooked. And I mean, Covington's a chucker. I mean, he's taken 35 3-point attempts in the last 4 games, and that's about 9 per game there. So he's always a guy who can dial up steals as well as a big upside, but pretty big price difference. He's 1,100 different, 6,200 on DK there, where he's the 9th most expensive, and the 17th most expensive on FanDuel, where he's just 5,100. I love Robert Covington tonight.
Yeah, and it's actually a good value on both sites. It's
Yeah,
just FanDuel. That's like, wow, that's a huge advantage right there. So I'd imagine he's not going to be highly owned, but some people will be on him. But I think it's such a good value that it doesn't even matter.
yeah. I mean, I really like him in both cash and tournaments, and
Hmm.
I mean that match Atlanta has him great defensively, so I really like Covington tonight. Finally seeing bigger minutes as well. Other guys in that value range, Aaron Gordon is 5,400 on DK, where he's a small forward, and obviously coming off a game against that top defense where he went 12 and 16. And OKC hasn't been great defensively. Like I actually don't mind Aaron Gordon here on DK, especially where he's small forward.
Yeah, and I think that floor is higher than sort of what you'd believe at his price. So I actually think he's a really safe play, and he has that high upside as well. So I think he's just a good all around play tonight.
Yeah, I mean he's played 30 minutes in 3 of the last 4 games, and I mean you got to go back to the 20th when he went below 20 fantasy points. So he's definitely in play for me, especially at a cheap price tag.
Hmm.
A guy you were on kind of late last night, you messaged me, oh, dang, a cheap small forward, and
And I and
he's
I said
been
I
playing
said it
well.
I said it with Luol Deng.
Yeah, it was a big question mark, but still, it counts.
Yeah, no. Oh, it definitely counts because I threw him in a few lineups. So I'm taking that victory and running around the field with it. But tonight it's a little different. I don't think Dallas will have the ability to sort of change that pace. I don't even know if they're going to want to change that pace.
Right.
Last night it kind of seemed like Houston controlled that game, so I'm not expecting the same results for tonight, but definitely an interesting value.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like the way he's been playing of late.
Hmm.
Been kind of consistent 17, 17, 16 for real points in the last 3 games and
Yeah.
shooting the ball pretty well. He's 50, 40% and 3 point percentage in the last three. So um, at that price tag, I think he's a pretty decent option. But like you said, I don't think that 30 fantasy point upside is there just because the pace is going to be a little bit slower.
Yeah.
If you're going any lower, Michael Kidd Gilchrist, that's the big difference. I mean, small forward. I mean, it's hard because Charlotte's battered with injuries right now. So you kind of see it hard staying close for all the Cleveland guys. But I mean, Charlotte's going to have to play big minutes either way because they're very limited.
Hmm. So yeah, and it's 1,300 difference. He's 4,500 on DraftKings and 5,800 on FanDuel. I think he's a good play on both, but that 1,300 difference really opens up a lot on DraftKings, and I think he could be one of your main pieces in a stars and scrub lineup.
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely with you there. I think that DK price is really attractive, much more just because, I mean, you look at Covington, I mean, he's less than MKG there.
Right.
Moving on to power forward, you're looking at a lot of these guys, and a lot of them are pretty similarly priced up top. But there is one difference. Miles Turner, much cheaper. He's just 5,500 on DK or on FanDuel at power forward, and then 6,300 at center. Um, I like Turner tonight either way. I like him a lot more on FanDuel, but with the ability to roster two centers on DK, Turner's borderline elite play tonight.
Yeah, I think even if he was like 7K, I'd still like him as a play tonight. But these values are just still really good for him. So especially on FanDuel, I mean that's just a great value.
Yeah, no, I think he's obviously one of your top plays on the night, still one of your best cash game options, and obviously tournament plays, he's a great value to fit things in. Brooke Lopez is the other one. He's your second most expensive center on the slate, and I mean he's your fifth most expensive on DK. So obviously that big difference from a guy who's 8,900 on FanDuel to 7,500 on DK. That's the big noticeable one on the slate tonight.
That is huge for lineup construction. That's like bumping down an entire tier when you switch over the sites. So I mean, DraftKings, that's a really nice play. And then I mean, we do like some centers tonight. So using that utility spot on another center is definitely an interesting option. But Lopez definitely in play.
Yeah. Another guy, not a huge difference in pricing wise as far as between the two sites, but Gobert is below 7K. Like you were mentioning, I mean, the ability to roster two centers on DK to really heighten your upside's always a nice move, and especially on tonight where there's plenty of center options. But I
Mhm.
mean, if you can kind of pair Gobert and Turner for both under 7K with their 35 to 40 fantasy point, upside, I really like that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, obviously, when you look at the higher priced guys, there's some upside up there as well. But I think there's going to be an even spread in ownership percentages, and those could be two guys that could get you to the point where not rostering those higher owned players could not really matter as much for your lineup.
Yeah, I think points per dollar, it's a lot kind of safer sitting below Lopez, Gobert, Turner,
Mhm.
kind of in that range.
Yeah.
Uh, some other guys we like, looking at power forwards and cheap guys. Jordan Hill is different. He's 5,500 on DK, priced up there, and he's just 4,700 on FanDuel. So obviously it's different positions, but 4,700 at center, kind of tough tonight because we like a lot of centers, but I think I actually don't mind paying up for him on 5,500 on DK there, just because he's a
Yeah.
different position.
And he showed the last few games that they're going to ride him. So,
Yeah.
hey, there you go. As long as you can get him for that price, throw him in there.
Yeah, I mean, they both him and Turner exceeded expectations. Obviously, the game went overtime, but they were having a solid game anyway. And now
Mhm.
they get an easy matchup against Brooklyn.
Right.
Looking to cheaper guys, Amari Stoudemire still continues to be a great option. Always a safe play since Hassan Whiteside's been down. Although the pain's gone, the hip still got to keep an eye on. I think he's questionable tonight, but probably more on the doubtful side. So Amari Stoudemire would be kind of that elite, very cheap play.
Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing as last night if you played. He's just so cheap and he's guaranteed points. So,
Yeah.
yeah, great play
I
on both
think it's
sides.
it's kind of a better matchup because I think he actually matches up a little bit better with the Dallas guys who are bigger on the inside. As kind of Houston ran a little bit more small ball, but as we saw, I mean, still 25 to 30 fantasy points is where he's going to sit.
Right.
If you're looking any cheaper, it's not a lot tonight. I think obviously Amari Stoudemire and Hill are your best options, and Turner as well. Um, for a value GPP guy, Ersan Ilyasova catches my eye just because of the matchup with Boston. Ilyasova kind of come back. He was a little bit injured, but he had a really nice January. Was really consistent, but um, usually we don't count on Ilyasova to be consistent.
Yeah, no, you're looking at him for tournament upside, and I think he definitely does have that tonight in this matchup. So, if you're looking for sort of a way to differentiate yourself, if you have a bunch of higher owned players, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. Moving back over to center, Gorjai Dang, line up at power forward. He's been incredibly consistent. He's been kind of like the cheaper Towns, you could say, over the last few games. And
Yeah.
both of us, we've been paying up for both of them on DK and just plugging them in. Still, he was great last night against the Lakers, still playing heavy minutes, 37, 38, and 39 in the last three games. And I think you can count on that yet again tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's been pretty much money in both cash and tournaments the past few days.
Yeah.
5,700, it's slowly going up, but I think he still has the upside and the floor to make that an automatic play, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, until he gets up in maybe that 6,500 range,
Right.
that's when I'll start questioning. But at below 6K, I mean, he's still a great price.
Right. And then you look next to him on DraftKings and the dude from the other night, Jokic, sitting there at 5,700. I mean, I guess the question is, does he have this upside he's shown the last two games, or is it more of just kind of two good games for him? You know what I mean?
I mean, when you've seen these get minutes, I mean, you've seen him produce in 24 minutes before. Like, he's
Right.
a great fantasy points per minute player. Um, I mean, he's 30, 35, and 25 in the last three games. Finally, seeing minutes. It's a tough matchup against a really good Utah front court that's healthy now. But he did have a tougher matchup against Toronto and went for a 50 burger. So I still think with his usage and what he can produce fantasy points per minute wise, he's worth a GPP look still.
Yeah. I mean, I think Dang is probably a little safer, but I think they're both really nice values.
Yeah. And if you're looking at the Kings situation, Willie Cauley-Stein didn't really produce last game, but still saw 28 minutes. A
Mm-hmm.
bit of an easier matchup against Chicago. Yes, they have Paul Gasol and Taj Gibson down low, but we've seen Cauley-Stein produce at a decent level, and Chicago hasn't been great against centers this season, so not a cash game option, but a tournament guy for me.
Yeah, and I mean, in some ways, it's similar to the Towns Dang thing that's going on right now, but Cousins is a little more selfish with all the production. But yeah, he's still a nice value at that price. It's a little tougher to get him in with those two guys we just mentioned that are right above him. But yeah, he's still nice value.
Yeah, and more so on DK because you can roster two centers. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
touching him on FanDuel, just so we're being clear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's going to wrap it up here for the Market Advantage. Thanks for hanging out with us, and check out Daily Fantasy Cafe for all the great tools and content.